All right, Senator Reedy, we'll get started with you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Today's Wednesday, March 16, 2022. We have 5 bills on the docket. We'll start off with Senator Reedy with Senate Bill 906. Today's a little bit different because it's a sponsor-only day. So, Senator Reedy, welcome. The floor is yours to present Senate Bill 906.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Great to be back before you in person. This is the first time I've been back in the committee in person since I left, and I miss you all every day in some ways. In some ways I don't. But it's good to see you all. Senate Bill 906, Mr. Chairman, is local legislation brought by the Carroll County Senators that would prohibit Carroll County State's Attorney from engaging in the private practice of law while serving as State's Attorney. Currently, Carroll County, this was brought to us by a constituent who made us aware that we didn't have this particular provision codified in law. It's been the practice of the State's Attorney's Office for nearly 30 years to not do private practice, and the deputies don't do private practice either. But we were told that we have 21 counties in the state that have this specifically mentioned in the law. Only Baltimore City, Garrett County, and Carroll do not. So we felt it would be best to have this be very clear in law. It was voted 3-0 in favor by our Senate delegation, and we just ask for your favorable support.
This is an outrageous piece of legislation. I can't believe you brought that before this committee, Senator. I just try to liven it up for the pages. They didn't get this. Nothing exciting here.
Well, they'll have a chance at your voting session if they hang around.
Yeah. That's all right.
I assume. Thank you all. Today is a very different day because we're going to sponsor only. These are the last bills that basically we heard for the crossover, which is on Monday. And so, had you come here a week ago, you had 4 people here. You had a full day of debate. Some of the more controversial bills have been heard then. Our voting session will probably be more enlightening and fun for you. Today is a sponsor only panel, so it's kind of very short. You see no witnesses here, so just. Senator, you're up.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Bill hearings.
Thank you. Welcome, Senator Eckert. You can start off with either Senate Bill 950 or 988.
All right. Let me start with 988. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Glad to be here with you today. Senator Addie Eckert from District 37 for the record. This is a bill that has come to us from Dorchester County and will increase the annual salary of the Orphans Court Judge for Dorchester County from a minimum of to up to $6,000, and the annual expense for each judge to be an additional $1,000. This increase would take effect at the beginning of the next term of office. Again, it was requested by the Dorchester County Council, and I ask for your favorable consideration and passage of Senate Bill 988 Dorchester County Orphans Court salary and expense allowance of the Orphans Court judges. Thank you very much.
Senate Bill 988 will now go on to Senate Bill 950. Whenever you're ready, Senator.
Okay, the next one, Senate Bill 950 is for Wycomico County Orphans Court salaries. And again, it's at the request of Wycomico County, which would increase the annual salary of the Orphans Court judge in Wycomico County from $9,500 to $9,500, excuse me, to $11,600. And the increase, again, would take place at the beginning of the next term. And again, there's increased workload in all of our jurisdictions on the shore, as you can imagine, in spite of the pandemic. And we would ask a favorable consideration and passage of this initiative for our local jurisdictions. Thank you.
Just one question. How many orphans court judges does this court have? Do you know?
I think three.
Three?
Yeah, we have three in Dorchester. I had to think. I wasn't sure which one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We usually have, I know we have three in Dorchester.
Okay, and three, everybody has three?
We
Thank
all-
you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, while we're waiting for Senator Watson, I'll introduce my bill, but I'll do it from here. Senate Bill 949. So this is born out of the discussion that I had with a couple folks over the summer and some of the research they did for the benefits of having a well-educated and kind of a well-seasoned and a diverse background for our law enforcement officers. And so a long time ago in Montgomery County actually required a bachelor's degree to become a police officer. And what happened was that actually they saw a decline in their recruitment because a lot of folks, let's say you were coming out of the military, or you just wanted to pursue a profession without having to go to college first, or you had an associate's degree but not a four-year degree. It stifled recruitment. And so it actually had the adverse effect. And so the idea was really mirrored off of kind of the GI Bill, which would essentially you'd be able to get a benefit. So if you were to join, the way that's drafted now is if you join, you have to have an associate's degree to become a law enforcement officer. And then within 5 years, or 6 years rather, of your joining the force, you'd have to complete a 4-year bachelor's degree. And obviously, the bill provides that the department would have to provide you with paid time on to get that, to satisfy that requirement. And you'd have to satisfy that requirement within that 6-year period of time. It also allows for you to transfer a benefit. So if you've done 5 years of successful service, then you could transfer 2 years to a dependent. And if you've done 10 years of successful service, let's say you joined with a college degree, then you could transfer 4 years to a dependent. So it's kind of modeled in that sense on the GI Bill. Obviously, you're not eligible if you were subject to disciplinary matters. And so that's the way that the bill's drafted now. Now, the FOP and some others have come in with amendments to make it optional, so that there is no associate's degree requirement, and that you could have the option of, this is the amendment, that you could have the option of pursuing a degree, and that if you stayed with the force for a certain period of time, then you would be able to get that for free. So I put this out here for discussion. The end goal is the discussion should surround giving our law enforcement officers more tools, more education, more experience, and have a more professionalized, quote-unquote, force. So that's the idea. And I had some interesting discussions with FOP and some of the other law enforcement agencies across the state over the summer about this. So I put it out there for consideration. We'll start off, I guess it's kind of weird to chair and present, but I'll start off with Senator Cassidy, and then Senator Lee, and then Senator Bailey.
So I like what you said about modeling it after the GI Bill. I think providing funding for police officers that if they want to further their education is an outstanding idea. I totally accept that the more educated anyone is in any walk of life, the better it is. It's good to encourage education. So the only part of the bill that I don't agree with is the mandating. Recruitment, as you know, statewide is already in the tanks, and I think we need folks. I think it's already built in, as an officer who wants to move up in the ranks, they kind of know if you're going to stay as a career and move up, you're going to have to further your education anyway. But for the patrolmen, where we have such a tough time in the recruitment, I think mandating isn't the way to go, especially when we just have been passing bills to remove professional degree requirements from a lot of other professions. I think it's the wrong way to go with the policing profession. And then as far as, I think I don't like unfunded mandates to counties, so I'm not sure where, paid time off. Look, officers are pursuing their education anyway in their evenings on the weekends. As they're going to community colleges, they're getting their associate's degrees. We've all got excellent community colleges. Almost every officer that I know is pursuing an associate's degree. And so I think mandating time off to pursue it, if it was a requirement for employment, then yeah, you probably have to do that. But I think that's a bridge we don't need to cross right now. I think the officers would be delighted that you're going to pay their tuition. It would be a huge incentive. So I like the carrot as opposed to the stick approach. I think, generally it's a good idea. We just need to back it off a little bit. My only suggestion.
No, I agree with you. Obviously, the mandate would come off if the paid time off would come off if it was mandated. But it's essentially, you're trying to, exactly right. The benefits of education are manifold and obvious, and so it's not only a recruitment tool but also to maintain a retention tool to ensure that you have a quality force. Sure, go.
You would include some guys who are nobody knows when they're a young cop if they're going to stay as a cop. So you're gonna have young people who will say, well, this will pay my tuition, so I'll do classes on, evenings and weekends. But in 2 years, I'll have my associate's degree. I get that for free. That's a recruitment team just for somebody. If they only stay for the force for 5 years, that's great. So I think you're right on with that.
This is just for my information. Different jurisdictions have different requirements of whether or not you have to have a bachelor's degree. Is that correct?
That's correct. So as Montgomery County used to have a bachelor's degree requirement.
So this would be for statewide, right?
Correct.
Does everybody, would this require them to get a bachelor's or
So
not?
as drafted, yes, but with the amendments, no.
Okay, but the RFOP, they want it to be optional to get a bachelor's degree?
Correct.
But if they get a bachelor's, if they go to the force, then there's like a scholarship program or something like the GI Bill?
Yeah.
Is that what that would do?
It's essentially that. So you get the longer time in service, then you could model it so that you would incur almost like a service obligation, or you'd have to pay it
Would being
back.
in the military help out with respect to employment? Does that count towards, or not really?
Not
Like
under
if
the
you're a
bill.
veteran or something?
Not under the bill, but obviously a lot of veterans do go into public safety and law enforcement.
Yeah, okay. Because I was just wondering, I think it's a great way to incentive to get really high-quality law enforcement if you're able to give them an education, which they probably want. I know for the GI Bill, which my father was a recipient of, he was a World War II veteran and couldn't gone to school without it. But we need better law enforcement, too. We need the best and brightest law enforcement. I think this would be a pretty good bill. What is the amendments that the fraternal order police want?
So they wanted so that, and I don't have them before, but I know them conceptually, is that they would get rid of the mandate requirement. So right now the bill requires you to obtain a college degree within 6 years of being appointed or completing the academy. Or being certified.
To be a law enforcement officer?
Correct. So the certification process would require you to have obtained that college degree within 6 years. So when you go to get recertified, and recertification is what, every 2 years? 3 years. Every 3 years. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Senator Bailey. Senator Bailey. And then Senator.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to say, as having been a police officer that graduated from high school, and went to about 3 years of college and then joined the police department, right? I got my bachelor's and my master's degree while working as a police officer, and I know a lot of people in the ranks that did that. But I would say this, that I worked with a lot of police officers that only had a high school diploma, and they were very good, very effective police officers, supervisors, and they went through. So but I do know that last year, a lot of the times when we talked about discipline issues dealing with police, and police that had large disciplinary files. When we looked at departments across the entire country, the departments that had the lowest rate of incidents, negative incidents with the public, were the ones that required the highest education. So there was a direct correlation between higher education and that. So I applaud you for bringing a bill like this. I don't think I'm in favor of the mandate, but look forward to, I will jump right into it and take some time reading this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As long as we're just weighing in on the bill, I think I agree with everything that other people have stated, that in my experience, a lot of high school kids decide to go into policing, and they do it without college degrees, frequently for financial reasons. And I wouldn't want to cut that off. So the idea of mandating it, I'm not in favor of, but encouraging it through making the scholarships available freely so they can enhance their educational status is a great idea. So take out the mandate, and you got my total support.
Optional route is good too, that way they can have the option. But I think anybody that would want to participate in this would want to get a bachelor's degree. It's a great incentive, also creates a lot of diversity in the police force too, because communities of color can partake in this. And I think if you're going to risk your life, defending communities and keeping them safe, you ought to be able to get some kind of scholarship out of this.
So I guess what we're calling a mandate, is that on page 3, lines 16 and 17 that we're talking about? Or are you talking about getting rid of 14 through 17? Page 3, where it says an applicant for certification as a police officer shall at a minimum hold an associate degree. I have no problem with that. I mean, everyone's talking about mandates, but I mean, you want to practice before a court, you have to go to undergrad and you have to go 3 years of law school. Officers have guns and they're interpreting the law every day on the land. So I have no problem with the mandate. And as I was trying to go through, I remember some years ago there was some publication that I thought Baltimore City's FOP had put out, and again, I'm not saying it, I'm not characterizing what they put in as a mandate, but I thought that there was something within this document, and I can't find it online right now, but they were talking about college degrees and the like. So, I mean, I would have no problem with the language. I wouldn't be so quick to remove it just because others are saying we don't want to have it. I mean, shucks, I'd like to have been a lawyer without having to go to law school, but that's not what the case. So, thank you.
No, your point's well taken. Also, I think council reminds me that last year, remember, in part of the reforms, you had a scholarship for associate's degrees. Do you remember that?
It's the Maryland Police Officer Scholarship.
Yeah. We created that so you could get an associate's degree for free. Senator West, you had something to say?
I just was going to respond briefly to that. So a kid graduates from high school and he needs a job. And if he can't get a job in policing because he doesn't have an associate's degree, if there's a mandate in place, he would probably get a job in another trade in order to have a job and have income coming in. So I think the mandate's a bad idea, but encouraging people to get education and paying the expense of the education, I think is a fantastic idea.
To that point, again, given the responsibility that officers have interacting and engaging with citizens, I don't necessarily want a police officer just to be a police officer because they need a job. I want them to want to be a police officer because they want to do the job. So I disagree.
I'd bring one more counter to that, and that is the fact of the cadet programs that we have seen when we talk about retention and we talk about the professionalism of police departments. A lot of children are able to get a job with the police department at age 18. They work from 18 to 21 with the police department. A lot of times when they do that, they extend, they go along and they get education during that time, but when they turn 21, they've got 3 years working in the workings of that police department, side to side with a police officer, and they go through the academy. And that shows the highest retention throughout. So that's why I think that the cadet program, and starting with people that are 18, I think for all the reasons across the board, that's why I am not so quickly to jump on a mandate. That's just me personally.
I'm just looking, starting salary right now for people with a bachelor's degree is almost $68,000 a year. So you're competing. You gotta compete with all the other jobs out there. So if we want to starting initial patrolman off at $70,000 a year, and obviously you got to compete a little bit more than that because most bachelor's degree holders don't have to live the life of an officer, so I'm guessing you have to go at least $80,000 to be competitive in the market. So if we want to start all of our cops off at $80,000 a year, I'm sure a lot of them would like that, but just got to be prepared for that. That's a heck of a hit.
They should be well paid.
Fine.
The questions, that'll end the hearing for Senate Bill 949. Senator Bailey, look forward to working with you on it, man. So, all right. So next we'll move on to Senator Watson, Senate Bill 956, and Dr. K is here. I know we don't have witnesses, but he is local, so it's all good. Sandy's killing me right now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Walt Stryker, and members of the BEST Committee up here in Annapolis. Thank you for the opportunity to present my final bill for the legislative session. Senate Bill 956 is a simple piece of legislation. It expands existing state law protecting elected officials from threats to include local health officers, election officials, and housing and building inspectors. This bill is not intended to stifle free speech and debate, but instead promote it through civil discourse. Some may question why include just these three categories of civil servants. The simplest answer is that our counties collectively agree that these workers experience the gravest and most frequent threats to their well-being in their line of duty. As we were coming up and working on this bill, I affectionately referred to it as the Fauci bill. And many people know the work and effort Dr. Fauci did in his responsible role, not as an elected official, but as a leader of an organization. And it's unfortunate that both he and his family had to suffer threats. The need for this bill is so great that Maryland Association of Counties leadership made it one of their 4 initiatives for the 2022 legislative session. Recent news and data supports their position since the coronavirus pandemic began 2 years ago. The National Association of County and City Health Officials reports more than 300 public health department leaders have left their posts. In Maryland, 7 county health officers have departed at every level of government. Threats have been cited as a reason for leaving. Our election officials are under similar assault. Just last Thursday, March 10th, the Brennan Center for Justice published a poll stating 1 in 6 election officials have experienced threats because of their job, and 77% say they feel these threats have increased in recent years. Worse yet, 30% of the officials in our poll know of 1 or more election workers who have left, at least in part, because of the fear for their safety, increased threats, or intimidation. In the long term, 60% of officials are concerned that threats, harassment, intimidation against local election officials will make it difficult to retain and recruit election workers. 20% plan to leave before the 2024 election. And similar to health officials and elected officials, our code enforcement officers experience regular harassments and threats on the job. To fully appreciate how difficult this work is, there are multiple reports from the American Association of Code Enforcement of these officers being killed or brutally assaulted in the line of duty. I was made aware by Sandy that the rule in JPR, if you have a late file bill, you can't have anybody testifying other than yourself. So on your floor systems, I encourage you to read testimony from representatives of each civil servant category named in the bill. Their stories and experiences are a stark reminder of the dangerous and polarizing times we live in, which is why this bill is so necessary. For these reasons, I respectfully urge your favorable vote on Senate Bill 956. Uh-oh.
Just a couple of questions so number 8 is that's the actual inspector, so the guys and gals who are actually going into the businesses and citing them for health violations and the like.
That's correct.
Right? That's the frontline workers, okay. But then we have health officer, that only refers to the county health officer, him or herself, right?
So my understanding is the health officer could be perceived as anyone that's articulating health guidelines to the general public, but also includes those folks who are or who have been, helping us with our coronavirus tests that we have to take on a weekly basis here in Annapolis.
So to me, just when I look at it, to me, I have a county health officer. I think most people have a county health officer. That's an appointed position. That's, he's the top. He's, to me, it would be like saying a local official. He's a health officer for the county.
They would be covered under this.
Right, but then I would not interpret this as saying the people who are actually going out into restaurants and the like to cite health violations. Just saying, I don't see this including that. And then when you say elected administrator, again, we have elected administrator, but it would not include, my reading, this would not include the folks in the polls who are sitting there as you check in, the elected, and the judges.
So let's talk for a second. So the building enforcement piece, the intent is to cover all of those who have to go into another facility to enforce codes. Those people would include those people who are ensuring that food standards are being adhered to, those types of things. We want to make sure they are all protected because they are the ones that have to go onto other properties sometimes
Sure, I got you,
when
but
they're not welcome.
this 8 specifically says building and building code enforcements. That's no, 8 would not relate to any frontline worker, as I read this, other than your zoning inspectors, your building inspectors. That's what 8 would include. I just to make sure that this language says what you, that's all, just to make sure the language says what we want. Because to me, 6 says the health officer, I have one in my county.
Yeah.
7 says my elected administrator. I think I have, I'm not sure, there's either 1 or 3, I forget whether it includes the panel. And then number 8 is the front line. That's how I interpret your bill.
So
Just-
what
I'm
are you
just
saying? You saying it's too loose or it's too tight?
I just want to make sure the
the
bill says what you're saying, because 8, to me, the frontline worker is only the frontline workers who are enforcing housing and building codes. Housing and building codes are, you didn't put enough insulation, your wiring's wrong, your septic system wasn't hooked up right. That's housing and building codes. So it's only it's only those frontline workers.
Okay.
And 6 and 7. I'm just saying that's how I read your bill.
That's why I like having discussions with you,
Yeah.
Castley. So if we need to tighten it up, I think that's a very, very simple amendment to do that, and I'm more than welcome to entertain that.
Thanks. I know what a question.
Actually, I like the bill, but you're right, it doesn't need to be tightened up. Because, and I know we've got the doctor here, the public health official here from Anne Arundel County. And I'll just ask, since you're there, I'll ask you if you could come up. But I know that we don't have witnesses today, but you're here, so I'll ask the question. Because this is part of the statute applies to an elected official or a public official. And for an election administrator or public employee responsible for inspecting doesn't meet that threshold in my mind, but potentially a public health officer does, because they're appointed, they're confirmed by the local jurisdiction. So if you could just talk about the process, like what you went through.
I would agree that he is.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a health officer.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think, but you, just got it. But for the committee, though, if you could just talk about the process by which you were appointed and confirmed.
Absolutely, Chairman. So I'm Nilesh Kalyanaram. I'm the health officer in Anne Arundel County. I'm also the president of the Maryland Association of County Health Officers. The process is that we get nominated by the county executive. We have to then be approved by the county council and then forwarded to the Maryland Department of Health to be approved by the Secretary of Health. So we have to have 3 different entities sign off and approve us.
And you act like, you are a public official because you are the face of whatever initiative that you're leading at the time concerning public health in your respective jurisdictions. So that to me makes sense. Do you want to?
I would just, one clarification. In your county, it's by the county council, but it's by the county health board, which in some counties, like yours and mine, that is the county council, but for some of us, it is a separate entity.
Correct.
But
It is the Board of Health
the Board of
technically,
Health.
although there are a few counties with a slight variation on the
variation, yeah.
jurisdiction of the Board of Health, but it is the Board of Health generally, which
Yeah,
is the county
but-
council in my
Yeah,
county.
and you're in my counties, it is the county council, so thank you.
While you're up there, could you sorry, go ahead, Senator Watson. Yep.
So in your normal role and responsibilities, do you have a staff that reports to you?
Yes.
And would that staff at some times be called to go to various locations to perform their functions?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that this bill is not only intended to cover you as the head person, but your staff who are community facing in the performance of their duties?
So, Senator, our understanding was that this would cover the health officer specifically.
Okay.
And then we had talked about our forward-facing staff. So predominantly there's 2 categories. We have our leadership. Overall, they have not faced the types of threats that health officers have faced.
Okay.
As the public face. But we've also had our environmental health staff who have faced threats. And I think Senator brought up this issue around housing inspectors. We have other types of inspectors as well who have faced threats in the community and throughout the state, at various times have required police escorts to do their job.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at, the folks who are responsible for building code enforcement, there's probably one individual who runs that, but then there are those individuals who have to go in those homes and facilities.
Correct.
And they're the ones that are at most risk sometimes.
Yes.
So the analogy going to what you do, I kind of look at the same thing. You would actually have a staff that you could forward deploy to take care of some health situations. But based on the current language in the bill, you're covered, your staff is not. But the folks who are going into the buildings with doing the actual building inspectors are covered.
Correct.
Okay, so that's something I think we can clean up.
Yeah, it's more akin to like, you're the senator, you're a public official, your staff is not. So you're covered under the current law, your staff is not.
Don't threaten my staff.
Hey, I would never dream of doing such a thing, all right? Okay.
You're not enforcing building codes, you're enforcing health codes. You go into the restaurant, you go into the senior living thing, you're not enforcing building codes, you're enforcing health codes, which is different than building codes, right?
That is correct, and we had talked about environmental health being included. I know that for time reasons that wasn't
No, I just want
included
to
in this
be
bill.
clear that it wasn't, I know in some counties, they cross-designate, you can come in, if you see a building code violation, you can raise that as well in some counties. But generally, not in all counties, a lot of times your inspector is only there to inspect to make sure that the refrigerator's at the right temperature, that they're cleaning up the kitchen, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes,
Health code.
in some counties, the health department does have, for
Cross.
instance, in Anne Arundel County, we do have some responsibilities around housing code enforcement as well. So the group that's going to, that falls under housing code may be in different departments in different counties.
Yeah, thank you.
Just while you're here, provide us with a little bit of background of your personal experience, why this is necessary.
Sure. So prior to the pandemic, I think we were much less visible, and we didn't have these types of issues where with COVID we became obviously very visible. Health officers did, and we get a lot of feedback. Some of it positive, a lot of it negative. Comes with a lot of hurtful, hateful speech. That's fine. We can handle that. But the threats are new. We have not experienced threats like this before. I know that on a different bill, you've heard testimony from health officers. I myself have had police protection at times based on the situation, just as recently as a few months ago, because of consistent threats. I'm here today. While I know that this is a sponsor-only session, we had other health officers who did not feel comfortable coming today to talk about this precisely because of their concern about threats that would stem from this in their counties. This is a new part of our life that and I can tell you that it's not something we ever thought would be a part of our lives. We are having trouble hiring in other counties for health officers, and this is one piece of that. It's just the visibility and frankly the threat. And there are many ways to do good in health and healthcare without having your family's safety be jeopardized. That is, I don't want to sound selfless, but I have 2 kids at home, and it troubles me that I have to think about their safety at home, and I have to have police cars driving by to make sure that we're safe.
World's getting more and more like that. It's unfortunate. All right, Senator Hedelman.
Say thank you. I know it's been a rough couple of years, and you guys have been on the front line, and just really appreciate all of your many, many, many hours you have helped the citizens of Anne Arundel County and Baltimore and the whole state. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Sure, yeah.
It's a quick question for council on the law, not the bill, but the other part of it's in the bill. It's the state officials. Are we state officials under that provision, or is there a separate provision for? No, that would cover you. That cover, so we have the same standard.
Yeah, so full rundown is actually state official means, so you've got the constitutional officers and other elected members of the General Assembly are specifically covered in there. Yeah. Right, so it's a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment for up to 3 years and a $2,500 maximum fine.
On the bottom page, the last page. Well, thank you. Sorry, go ahead. Senator Huff, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
What is the current penalty if you, because obviously you can't do this to a layperson either. What is the current penalty for everyone else?
Looking at assault by, with intent to frighten, you need an apparent ability to carry out, the threat. So, I mean, I guess if they were able to proceed under a theory for second-degree assault, you'd be looking at the maximum there. I'd have to look into anything more specific so there's not a specific threat statute.
You have to show, for assault, you have to show an ability or intent to carry it out.
Right, I mean, that sort of falls like true threats in a First Amendment context regardless, right? So it needs to rise to a certain level where you do have an apparent ability to carry it out just to be consistent with the Constitution.
It's an interesting law because I'm looking at it. I don't know. I just look at the list is on there. So I notice like state's attorneys, but like sheriffs or police chiefs aren't. I guess they're already covered on, what are they, a felony if they're law enforcement? I guess, no, that's an assault. That's assault. That's not a threat. They're a state official or a local official? Okay, got it.
Office. No, sheriff wouldn't be local official. Sheriff, your state, it says a state official.
Well, you're Montgomery County Police Chief.
He a local official.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for everything you've done for our state and for the county. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's great. All right, with that, that'll conclude the hearing for Senate Bill 956 and our hearings for the day. Let's come back at 2:30 for voting. So we've got to be on the floor at 5 p.m. So let's say 2:30 for voting. All right.